Number 1. This is honestly a little freaky, and makes me a bit terrified whenever I think about it, to be honest. Still, I'm willing to share. I live in England, in an old, beautiful cottage that's been in my family since my great-grandfather bought it all those years ago. Prior to him, my ancestors had all been very poor, and could scarcely afford to put a roof over their heads. The story goes that when my great-grandfather was a young man, he set off by himself up to Scotland. Several years later, he returned a rich man, and was able to buy the family cottage. He never spoke about how he made his fortune. Well, he did, but not definitively. The story always changed. One day, he might tell you it was from a business venture. Then another day, he might tell you he got lucky gambling, or made a pact with a gypsy. There were so many different answers that he gave, that eventually, people just stopped asking altogether. Perhaps he'd come into the money illegally, they thought. That's why he always avoided answering the question. My family at the time couldn't have cared less if that was the case, to be honest. They could finally eat, drink, and buy whatever they wanted, and didn't have to scrounge to make ends meet. Anyway, over the generations, the money that my great-grandfather accumulated was added to, and to this day, we remain quite well off. The problem is, money wasn't all that my ambitious relative brought back with him from north of the border. You see, not long after buying the cottage, and still young at the age of 29, he suddenly lost his sanity. That is to say, that overnight, he went completely mad. He started complaining about a thin, red man that kept following him. We know this from the journals that my great-grandfather kept. According to him, the thing, for lack of a better word, was a bony, emaciated humanoid with sunken eye sockets and paper-thin lips that didn't fully cover its teeth. It didn't wear any clothes. It was just completely red, like it was constantly bleeding all over, like a human man if all of the skin had been stripped from him. He said he could see it watching him wherever he went, climbing on walls and ceilings. The last entry talks about how the thing kept whispering to him as he slept, that it kept him up all night, every night, and how he couldn't take it anymore. The next day, he took his hunting shotgun and shot himself in the head, leaving his wife and his young son, my grandfather, alone. Time goes by, and my grandfather, Winston, grows up to be a successful businessman himself. Just like his father before him, he found a wife and had some children of his own at a young age. The oldest of these children was a son, my father. Unfortunately, just like his father again, my grandfather also lost his mind exactly 10 years later in life than his father. At the age of 39, he started screaming about being followed by a red figure. He said that the thin creature stalked him and would appear out of the blue when he least expected it. He handled these hallucinations better than my great-grandfather had been able to. For all intents and purposes, life went on for him. But sadly, the hallucinations persisted and got worse over time. According to my grandmother, he used to say that the thin red man wouldn't leave him alone anymore. Finally, 10 long months after becoming mentally ill, he was found dead in the pond of the family estate. According to the coroner's report, my grandfather had been sleepwalking and somehow managed to unconsciously make his way to the pond outside. For whatever reason, he didn't wake up and drowned in the water. I never met either of those men. They both died before I was born, obviously. I've only ever read my great-grandfather's journal and listened to stories about my grandfather. My own father, however, I of course knew very well, and his story is what haunts me the most. Like his father and his father before him, he met a girl and had a family at a young age. I was the eldest of his children. I'm grateful that I got to know my father growing up. He was a kind man, funny too, and very smart. He always took care of my mother, myself, and my siblings. Our youths were amazing. When my father turned 49, I noticed that something wasn't right at home. He and my mother kept his mental condition a secret from us youngsters, but eventually the truth slipped out. While home alone with my dad, he broke out into sweats and started telling me that he was seeing the thin red man. This was the first time I'd ever heard someone telling me about seeing the creature firsthand. He said it was just like it had been described in the journal, the stuff of nightmares. Thin, tall, and bony. He often saw it late at night while in bed, crawling across the ceiling of the bedroom, twisting its head backwards to stare down at him. My father held out for a little over a year, suffering from constant night terrors, which over time became day and night terrors. Things seemed to get worse and worse, and no amount of medical assistance seemed to do a thing. Eventually, he took his own life. I don't want to go into details about that, but it was definitely deliberate. I miss him greatly. We all do. As it stands, I'm 26 years old. I too met a girl whilst I was away at university, and the two of us are currently planning our wedding. She wants to start a family, and to be honest, so do I. I'm inclined to believe that all of these deaths in my family have been the result of a genetical mental illness, one which I hope I won't develop. I'll definitely be keeping an eye on it, I can tell you that much. I like to think that the only reason my father and grandfather saw the same red figure was because they had both heard about it from my grandfather's journal. They had read the story so many times that it had just slipped into their subconscious. So, when they started to lose grip of reality, their hallucinations manifested into this red man. Still, I'd be lying if I said that the thought that this could be a family curse didn't affect me, seeing as I'm my family's firstborn son. For whatever reason, it seems to only affect the men in our family. I just hope that I never meet this thin red man face to face. And, for the sake of our first future baby, I really hope it's a girl. Number 2. This isn't a personal family curse story, obviously, but one that I find particularly interesting is what you might call the curse of the dragon. I'm sure you all know who Bruce Lee is. Before him, his father was also somewhat famous back in Hong Kong. He was an operatic actor called Lee Hui Chuen. The story goes that Hui Chuen once angered a group of Chinese merchants, did the dirty on them, so to speak. Whether this was a deal gone wrong or a double crossing, I couldn't tell you. Regardless, he got on their bad side, and as a result, they put a curse on him and his bloodline, saying that all of the males in his family would die young. Fast forward a number of years, and Hui Chuen didn't live a particularly long life, dying less than a week after the birth of his grandson, Brandon. We'll get to him in a moment. Hui Chuen's son, the legendary actor Bruce Lee, died even younger than his father at the age of 32. It's believed that he suffered an allergic reaction to a painkiller, which caused his brain to swell up inside his skull. The exact cause of death is still shrouded in uncertainty, and there are a number of conspiracy theories surrounding the last moments of his life. Even more conspicuous, however, was the death of Bruce's own son, the actor Brandon Lee. He's best known for starring in the action film The Crow. It was thought that he would go on to have a successful acting career just like his father, but sadly, he never got the chance. The curse of the dragon struck once again on the set of The Crow. During one of the movie's sequences, Brandon's character was meant to be shot by a thug. The gun which was being used as a prop, a .44 Magnum, was loaded with blanks to make the scene more realistic. However, at some point prior to shooting, one of the prop crew accidentally left a live round in the chamber. The actor with the weapon had no idea about this, and when it came time to film the scene, he pulled the trigger and ended up shooting Brandon in the chest from a distance of 12 feet. He was immediately rushed to hospital. After 6 hours of surgery, however, Brandon succumbed to his injuries and died on the operating table. The remaining scenes were filmed using body doubles and special effects, and the movie went on to gain a cult following. Brandon himself was buried next to his father in Lakeview Cemetery, Seattle. He was only 28 years old. Having had no sons of his own, it seems like the curse of the dragon has finally been lifted. Whether you believe the deaths were the result of a family curse, or just a simple set of tragic coincidences, the world lost a lot of talent when Bruce and Brandon died. May the Lees rest in peace. Number 3. This isn't a family curse that affects my family, but rather my friends. Every year, on May 25th, all of his family gather together at one of their homes and spend the next 24 hours in the same room together. Nobody leaves until midnight, and nobody ever leaves the eyeshot of another family member. They don't sleep. They just spend the time eating and talking, waiting the day out. If one of them needs to go to the bathroom, they'll go in groups and keep each other in their sights. When my friend and his siblings were kids, they thought this was just some family tradition that every family in America took part in. As they got older, their mother let them know that there was a much more serious reason they did this. For as long as the family on their mother's side could remember, every year, on the 25th of May, one of their relatives would go missing. In the past, this seemed to happen without fail. Some would eventually turn up dead, but for the most part, they just disappeared, never to be seen or heard from again. It could be any one of their blood relatives that happened to go missing on the day. A cousin, an uncle, an aunt. As long as they shared blood with that side of the family, they were at risk of vanishing, at risk of falling victim to the family curse. Sort of like a deadly version of roulette, if you will. Generations ago, when their family started to notice a pattern emerging, the various related households created the tradition of coming together on the same day every year. By keeping an eye on each other, nobody was ever going to vanish into thin air. In the years when everyone in the family stuck to the plan, it worked, and nobody would go missing. This had apparently been going on in their family for centuries, before any living family member could remember at least. Everyone would just come together, stick together, and wait the day out. Occasionally, a cousin or someone might decide that the whole May Day family curse was hogwash, and go off to do something else by themselves. If they spent any of May 25th alone, even just like driving somewhere or going to the bathroom by themselves, then it was going to be their year to take the bullet. One year, my friend's second cousin, Tony, ignored the family ritual and went off to see a concert with some friends instead. 3 weeks later, they found his body off the side of the motorway. He had lost control of his car and crashed into a tree. Took people ages to find him for some reason. According to my friend, 2 other family members had gone missing in his lifetime alone. He has no idea what happened to them. Nobody in the family does. Whatever you make of this story, I think it's pretty interesting, and I know for a fact that my friend and his family still have these gatherings every year. They don't spend 1 minute of that particular day out of eyeshot, and if the story's true, I can't say I blame them. Number 4. Everyone who returned to see the house my grandmother grew up in died a violent death within months. No one has gone back to her country in a long time, but the few relatives who went back to the town after all of these deaths stayed far away from the house. One died in a fire, one fell down the stairs, one was electrocuted in a freak accident, one was found at the bottom of a ladder. Number 5. My family comes from Haiti, Voodoo country. One night, when I was very young, my baby sister fell sick with a dangerously high fever. Nothing my parents did made her any better, and the doctors were stumped. I was with my parents at the time, and I recall how at one point during the evening, a strange old man entered the room. He said that a curse had been placed upon the child, possibly by some sort of jealous witch who always wanted a daughter or something. "I can save her," he said, "but the curse will pass on to another person. Do you accept my offer?" Not really understanding what he meant, and desperate to try anything to bring down their daughter's fever, my parents agreed. The mysterious man knelt over my sister and said a prayer, then placed his hand upon her forehead and whispered something under his breath, whilst in some sort of trance-like state. "It is done," I remember him saying. Was it done though? I mean, nothing had seemed to change. My baby sister still had a fever. Assuming he was just some crazy guy, my parents pretended to be grateful and sent him on his way. Before he left, however, he said something that chilled me, even as a child. "Now somebody else in your family is dead." That made us all uncomfortable. Still, he left without causing any more trouble. Through the night, my little sister cried, but amazingly, she did seem to be getting better. By morning, she was right as rain. It was a miraculous recovery, and one that perplexed the local doctors. Nobody could seem to explain it. Elated, my mother paid a visit to all the members of the family to tell them the good news. She got to the doorstep of her sister, who we'll call T. When the door was answered, she was met with her sister's crying husband. "I was about to call you," he said. During the night, T had a heart attack. She didn't make it. My heart sinks whenever I think about that old man who came to visit. I'm grateful he saved my sister's life, but the whole incident scares the life out of me. My story's a bit odd. The males on my father's side of the family always die in October. My grandfather, his 3 brothers, their 4 sons, and my great-grandfather. The last thing my grandpa ever said to us as we were leaving his house one summer visit was, "Well, if I make it through October, I'll see you all at Christmas." He died October 3rd of a heart attack. The plus side to this is I'm effectively immortal 11 months of the year. So, there's that. Hey guys, Lazy here, and thank you very much for listening. Well, first things first, have a very Merry Christmas everyone. There won't be another video before then, I can tell you that much. Yeah, it's been quite a while since my last video, hasn't it? Been dealing with a bit of stuff at the minute, but hopefully we'll be getting back into the swing of things very soon. I know I say that literally every time now, but this time, just watch this space. Watch this space, people. Anyway, if you like the video, then please be sure to smash that like button or I'll smash you. And I'll be coming back very soon this time, I promise. Anyway guys, until then, do have a very Merry Christmas, or whichever holiday you celebrate around this time, and take care of yourselves. Stay spooky. And remember, the best things happen in the dark. Oh, oh, oh.